Another great use for Fiddler is to do performance evaluations of websites. So I have an existing Pluralsight course on web performance that goes into all of the details of the demonstration I'm going to show you. I've got a version of the site before I've done optimizations and a version of the site after. And that will go through all the detail of compression, minification, expirations, all the other techniques to help you make improvements. We're going to focus in this module on how do we use Fiddler to give us a quick evaluation of the performance of a site. What kind of things would you look for? What things are obvious when you look through Fiddler? Then we'll compare the Fiddler trace of the before and after. So we talked before about the statistics tab, so it's very helpful to get a basic request count and how many bytes were received to give you a feeling for how big the page is. We can look at the session list and sort by things like body, which will give us the largest components that make up the particular request for that page. We can see things such as are things cached or not. We can see whether files are being consolidated. The inspectors can help us see if we're using compression effectively. Are we taking advantage of minification of JavaScript and CSS files to remove white space? We can also use the timeline feature to give us an outline of what the requests look like for each of these. We can also turn on filters, which does a very basic heat map for us, which will mark different components of the requests and responses that take a certain amount of time. So for instance, we can go into filters and say, show me the basic heat map, and it'll show yellow or red for files that take particularly long to download. It's very helpful when you do performance evaluations to do a save before you've made enhancements and after. It's very nice to be able to show people, and for historical purposes to be able to go back and say, this is how the site worked before I touched it and made the improvements that I made. Here's the version afterwards. So it's very helpful to save a capture of both of these. Using Fiddler to do a performance evaluation of a page or site is very useful. Again, we'll clear our cache, we'll start our browser. We'll go to the before version of the website, and then we will visit the after version of the website. You'll see that visually these look very much the same, but if we look at the Fiddler traces for these, we'll get a very different story. So the first thing we'll notice, and what's useful, is to select the sessions that were requested for the original before optimization. Go to the statistics tab, and we can see that there were 16 total requests and almost 1.5 MB was downloaded to the client. If we do the same quick comparison of statistics, we can see that in the optimized site we've gone down to only 11 requests, but you can see we've cut the size of the page in almost a third. So all of the files that make up that page, we've made it only a third of what its size was before. We can continue to look at some of the things here. We can see that the body for the jQuery here is rather large. We can see that we made a total of 3 requests for JavaScript files. If we were to look in the bottom, we can see that we've made one single request. If we look at the inspectors, we can see that we made one single request for all of our JavaScript files. And if we look through what this looks like, we can see that it's been minified, so all of the white space and comments have been removed. And we can also see, if we were to look at this in detail, that this is also consolidated. All of the JavaScript files that make up the site are now downloaded in a single file, which also helps for the client not needing to request as many files, which improves your performance. A couple other things we can see. Not only have we combined and minimized, we've also used compression on these, so you can see that it's actually smaller here as well. We can look and see immediately that these images are very large. So these particular images that we're displaying, images, especially JPEGs, can be traded off for quality versus performance, and we can see that these are all about 250K or above. And if we look at the same images down below, we can see we've made drastic improvements, and yet the quality, if you were to compare the two side by side, is virtually the same. Again, we can notice another use here of sprites. So if we were to go look at the image view in the inspector, we can see that up above we were actually had each individual image in this case was being downloaded separately. Through the use of CSS sprites, we've now combined all of those images into a single file, which again reduces the number of requests that my client needs to make to the server. So again, a Fiddler review of a website for performance is very helpful. We can also see the caching. In the original set of requests, it was not taking advantage of any caching. So if a user came back to my website a week from now, even though those files would still be in their browser cache most likely, they're going to have to go back to the server and say, I've got all these files, but I'm not sure if they're fresh. By taking advantage of caching correctly, we can see that we've set some cache expirations to say that these files are good for a period of time, so the browser does not need to come back and get them. So again, it's very helpful to do a quick review of sites, look for large files, look for a number of JavaScript files where those could be combined, the same with the CSS. So it's just a great tool to get a first look at what are some of the areas I might be having performance issues with, so I can go focus on those to make improvements. In order to see some of the other performance aspects of using Fiddler, I'm going to go to a site that's not hosted on my own machine. So we'll go back to the Pluralsight homepage. If I were to open this up in Fiddler, we can again select all of the sessions and see the number of requests that were made and how big the files were. We can look at the timeline and see which particular files might be taking longer to download, so we can put some focus. It looks like most of those are behaving okay. If we look at filters, one of the useful features is the time heat map. So if I turn on a time heat map and apply the filter set and go back, this will indicate to us the particular request that took longer than what we would expect. So they've got a color coding system based on how many milliseconds, and they mark them either normal or yellow or red based on how long it took to download particular files. So if we were to go here and look, we can say for whatever reason these, obviously based on size, took a long time to download. So we can focus on other ways that we can optimize those particular images so they take less time for the downloads to complete.